In this lesson, we'll begin applying formulas to some subcomponents. Alright, so we should have every component in place. So go ahead and click on it and right-click your element. So we should have our component with our subcomponents. If you go to Attributes, we should make sure that each one of these options here are custom. Our depth, height, and width are all set to the option mode using the Details box. And I don't think we did it at the end of our previous lesson, so go ahead and click on that Details box for cabinet width. And then go ahead and add these values. 60 inches for 5 feet, hit tab twice. 120 inches for 10 feet, hit tab twice. And 180 inches for 15 feet, hit tab twice. Click apply and we'll be at the same point where we need to be. So now what I want to do is I want to be able to come to our components, and we're going to start from the bottom. And I want to be able to control this bottom piece. One, I want to be able to control its positioning. You remember how we had to kind of move this to be offset according to the material thickness? I want to be able to set a parameter that's going to let this always reference its positioning, and it will always be offset according to material thickness in case I ever need to change the material thickness. So, one, that's the first one, but I also want to control its size. So I want to be able to control its width, depth, and height. So let's go ahead and get this accomplished. So first things, let's start off with our positioning. So you can see here, because we moved it, we have that 0.75. But it might not always be 0.75. If I get to the point where, later on down the line, I might make some changes to this, and I might want an option for material thickness, I want this to be positioned referencing that thickness. So let's go ahead and put a formula in place that'll allow us to do just that. So what we need to do is we need to reference the material thickness. And that material thickness, you click out of here, click out of this, is actually referenced in our bookshelf here. So go to bookshelf, and it's located in our bookshelf component, overall component, under material thickness. And we're going to need to make sure that we type it just like this. But when you're telling SketchUp, hey, I want to reference this particular component, there's a certain way to do it. After all, this bookshelf is one giant component composed of several subcomponents. So if we're referencing something from a component, we need to let SketchUp know exactly which one it is. And to do that, you type it out exactly like this with the exclamation mark. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So we'll go down here, we'll double click, click on your bottom. So again, for our position, 0.75 is right, but we want it to be flexible. Go ahead and type in equal. Now we're going to reference the bookshelf. Type it exactly how we have it. Exclamation mark, material thickness, M-A-T-L, capital T, H-I-C-K-N-E-S-S. Hit tab. You shouldn't get any kind of error message, but this shouldn't move at all. It should stay in the exact position, because after all, the material thickness is 0.75 inches, right? So, and that is that number we actually typed in there. So if you wanted to mess with this position, let's say we change the material thickness. Let's say the material thickness was 1.25 inches. You'll see that slight movement there, and that's its offset, and it will always be according to this. So in our case, we just want it to be 0.75 for our design here. Hit tab or enter, and we're in good shape. So now, I also mentioned I want to take care of the size. So let's go ahead and apply some formulas that are going to let us control the size of this particular shelf. So for sizing along the x-axis, and in our case, that's going to be our width, which is going this way. And we know that because we can grab this tape measure tool and measure it, and that should equal that value. But what we want is this to be our cabinet width, which is 5 feet, minus 2 times the material thickness. And why that? Because 0.75 here, material thickness, 0.75 material thickness here. That's 2 of them, 1, 2. So we want this entire width minus 2 of those will always give us this length, right? Because this needs to fit in between those two pieces. So making sure this is selected, we're going to go ahead and adjust this by typing in the formula. So it should say equals, and again, we're going to do the width or along the X here. So we're going to type in equals bookshelf, because we're referencing a particular element from our bookshelf component. The bookshelf's cabinet width minus parentheses 2 times bookshelf exclamation mark material thickness. And again, I can't help but to reiterate, try your best. I mean, you got to make sure it's typed exactly how we have all the attributes in place. Go ahead and close those parentheses. So equals my bookshelf's cabinets width minus 2 times my bookshelf's material thickness. Tab to accept. It should equal that same 58.5, and it does. So we're in good shape. So now we want to mess with the y here. In our case, we know that the y, looking here, is the depth. So I'm going to go ahead and go in here, and I'm going to say equals, I'm going to reference my bookshelf, exclamation mark, and we want that to be the depth. I'm sorry, bookshelf, so we'll say cabinet depth. And again, these are all attributes we put in earlier, so making sure everything's consistent is the key. Tab, and that shouldn't change as well. That should be what we need it to be. So I can come in here now, last but not least, this will actually be my material thickness, because we're actually going to be going in the Z direction. So that means basically the thickness going up along this blue axis. And then I want that to equals the bookshelf's material thickness. And there really shouldn't be any movement because we already pretty much had everything in place. Hit tab, no warning signs, so we are in good shape. So we've applied pretty much all the formulas we need for our bottom piece, and we can now control it. So in the next lesson, we're going to jump over to our next piece, which will be working with this left side, and we'll work with a few more parameters we can use for that. So I'll meet you in the next lesson where we'll apply some more parameters to our left subcomponent.